Hello, 120 students. It's time to return to our rhetorical analysis project. You've been receiving a lot of messages the past week from the university, from your instructors. You've had other video greetings, and that's all been about the setup of this new arrangement we're going to be doing. So do you remember this assignment? This started about a month ago, and I put together these slides for both my class and Dr. Boyer's class so that we can help you start wrapping your mind around uh, how to make some progress on this assignment. Probably all over the place with it. I'm assuming that you haven't written a single word on it yet, and I'm assuming that in the next 2 weeks we could get a complete project. So that's the hope. Let me talk through these slides. After this presentation, we have some individual and group work for you to do, which we'll explain in a bit. Rhetorical analysis, restarting the semester, restarting the project. This is your how-to guide. So I want to start off with a reminder of your assignment. This is quoted directly from the assignment sheet that Dr. Boyer and I have put together. And I'll make available these slides. You have this also at your course networking site or at the Moodle site. These links are hot links. So these are all the readings we've had. So I think it's a good idea for you to make sure you've read these readings and for you to review them, kind of page through them. I think you look at them differently after you've been wrestling with the project for a while. The project has been marinating, during the past month. But definitely do look through these readings. And again, these are posted at your course site. So another resource will be examples of rhetorical analysis. I have an example that is actually part of an activity I want us to do today. This was from the Tribune, March 20th, a few days ago. Clarence Page's article, which we will link to the course site, is entitled "Trump's Mixed Messages About Coronavirus Aren't Helping." And the text, the rhetorical text that's being analyzed here is a single word. And it's that word Chinese in the text of Trump's speech. It was written in a Sharpie over the prepared remarks. And Clarence Page does a masterful job of analyzing this. So I'm going to ask you as a kind of a group to brainstorm what kind of rhetoric you see, what kind of analysis you see in Clarence Page's treatment of this. And I'll give you a few hints. Look to what's being analyzed. Look to his discussion of who the real audience is. There's some interesting and a little bit surprising twists to the way he analyzes what Trump is doing. But I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll let you look at that when I'm done talking. So the next resource reminder is one another, examples, more examples. So we expect you to start this today or restart it today to get together in your groups and for you to just throw ideas out. I would recommend you could talk about your papers, but we don't want to shame anybody or guilt anybody out if you really haven't started. That's really okay. I mean, I do think there's an advantage to letting these ideas marinate and then for you to kind of share your understandings of them and try to figure them out together. So yeah, you'll come up with a lot of examples. And actually, one of the activities I want you to do when you get into your groups, and we'll explain this later, is to kind of go through all these slides and see what examples you can find that illustrate the principles. I'm not going to be talking about the concepts here, but I'm not really going to be mentioning examples. So I want to put that to you to look for from your own memory. And it doesn't have to be from your paper. This could be from anywhere in your experience, your memory, what you see around you. Okay. Okay, we have a lot of resources, your readings, one another, the Clarence Page, all of them. There's a problem with resources and examples. I think I hear this from students often when we talk about rhetoric. You end up being very confused. What exactly is rhetoric? And what is rhetorical analysis? And then not only what is this thing, but how do you do it? So that's what the purpose of these slides are, to kind of give you a how-to, a three-step process for answering both the questions of what rhetorical analysis is and then how to do it. So I have 3 steps. The first step is just to simplify the task. Okay, rhetorical analysis is plain and simple analysis, and you've done this before, you've seen it, you're learning it in this class, you're learning it in college. Your goal is to become savvy in the arts of analysis and sharp in your critical analysis. So I would say just forget the word rhetoric if that's the thing that's confusing you. You really don't need the word rhetoric to get started on this. I have here a quote of one of my favorite critics, M.H. Abrams, who very effectively simplified, the whole art of literary criticism. When I was in graduate school in the 1980s and we were learning about deconstruction and I didn't understand anything what was going on, M.H. Abrams came to the rescue and he said, no, the goal of criticism, the prerequisite for criticism or analysis is to have a keen eye for the obvious. Okay, that's a wonderful expression. The obvious should be right there, but we often miss it. So we have to train ourselves to really look at the text we're analyzing and see what is there, and what is it saying, what effect does it have? So, simplify, just get to an essence, get to a reaction, and, don't try to work too hard to jump through all the hoops that your professors and your textbooks are giving you to make it be real rhetorical analysis. No, just analyze, look at what's there, and try to present that to your reader. Say, well, here's what's really here, and you kind of describe that, and the reader will say, oh, that's kind of obvious. Yeah, that really is there. So if you have any examples, this is something to bring out in your groups. Any examples of how the obvious can be missed, how somebody is doing something in plain sight, and the text, people miss the point of it. So what is there about your text that provokes thought or invites analysis? Pursue the directions and conclusions that your text and your thinking on it invites or creates unexpectedly. So, plunge into the process of analysis. Simplify the task. Again, just analyze the text you have. There's a reason you chose this text. And, so your goal is to hand that over to your reader. So, anybody who knows me knows I like to balance things. So if step 1 is to simplify the task, step 2 is to complicate the task. And by this, I mean, take successive passes at interrogating the text and slowly adding layers of complexity or concepts or features that, fall in the category of rhetoric. And so these next few slides are going to identify what I consider to be the key principles of rhetoric. And you're always doing rhetorical analysis if you're making reference to these key concepts. So to me, this is another term I'm going to use that is kind of a good college term is the word heuristic. It begins with an H, H-E-U-R-I-S-T-I-C. It's a great word. A heuristic for rhetorical analysis is to kind of list out these terms just on a blank sheet of paper, and then to ask yourself, what can I say about this term? What can I say about this other term? What can I say about this other term? And have it be kind of a note-taking activity for your project. So, okay, let's talk about the first term. This is obvious. There's a message. The author is sending some kind of message. That's why it was written. That's why we read it. Okay, so think about the message. That's a rhetorical concept. What message is being sent here? What is the apparent message? Now, here we get a little bit of a twist here, because there's sometimes a divide or a distinction between what appears to be the message and then beneath it what the real message is. And this is the joy and the fun of rhetoric, of rhetorical analysis, where you get at the truth that, again, it's not obvious. Okay, so you got M.H. Abrams saying a keen eye for the obvious, and well, what's not so obvious here? So, and then afterwards you say, oh, that unobvious thing really was obvious. I just didn't see it at first. That's why you need that keen eye. But at any rate, there's that divide between apparent and real messages. I just play around with that. This is not true for every piece of writing. And so I wouldn't say, do this all the time, but these are just ideas that are floating around in your head as you're brainstorming what you can do with your text. And I would ask you, what can you say about the message? Is it an important message? Is it a needed message? Is it a neglected message? I mean, these are all different things for different topics. Is it a message for a particular situation or kind of people? So, just think about what is there to say about the message. Okay, rhetoric. Rhetoric is all about strategy and how does it work? How does the author achieve his or her goals? So to be a strategic thinker and to look for the ways that the text is put together, the way it achieves its ends. What are the moves? Break down the moves, comment on the moves. Dr. Boyer and I are big fans of They Say, I Say, because that book is all about strategies and moves for doing academic discourse. But it's a similar kind of thing. How does it work? How does a discussion work? How does persuasion work? And in this particular case, how is the persuasion working? Audience is probably the most central of rhetorical concepts. When you organize your invention, your writing, your purposes, and I'm using a lot of other rhetorical terms, around your thinking of an audience, what is this audience's psychology? What will be effective with this audience? When you let your audience guide every move you make, you're thinking rhetorically. So any analysis you could do of the intended audience, again, who's the apparent audience, who's the real audience? Is the audience being manipulated? I put down a random thing here. Is the audience being spoken to in code? Sometimes there's a specialized language that, a group will share to unite them. And we call that a code. Lots can be said about here. And I'm not going to say any more because I'm tempted to go into a whole mini lecture about dog whistles and other things, but we're going to move on. Rhetoric. Rhetoric is about proofs. How do you prove your, the thing you're trying to persuade your audience to do or to convince your audience of, how do you prove it? And I think you all have heard of these three Greek terms, ethos, pathos, logos. They come from Aristotle. And we've talked about them in class, and our readings have certainly talked about them. So you know these terms. Does anybody see in my slide here a rhetorical argument that I am making? Think about it a minute. What have I done? Okay, here's what I've done. I'm going to tell you very quickly. Whenever I see these three words, it's always in a different order. It's always logos, pathos, and ethos, or logos, ethos, and pathos. I think that's the usual order. Whatever it is, logos always goes first. And there's a privileging in that order of rational proof. But what was wonderful about Aristotle was he really equated these three different kinds of appeals. And he had a much more open-handed approach to what was legitimate, what was effective, what you can use. So yeah, logos is really important, but I don't know if I would put ethos or pathos up higher, but I think it's a good question to raise, and I'm kind of doing it in a sly, indirect way here. So I'm doing a rhetorical analysis of my PowerPoint slides here just to try to illustrate a little how this works. Okay, speaker, obviously a component, a rhetorical concept is a speaker. And I got these bolded words, agenda, background, or vested interest. Anytime you peel back some of these layers of, why is this person making this argument? What are they trying to achieve? What is their hidden agenda? What is their background? What's their angle? So I mean, we do this all the time when we always do a rhetorical analysis when we ask that question, like what's in it for you? But put that on your list of brainstorming things and see if you could find a way to generate some notes about any rhetorical analysis you do. You're not going to hit on all these things. And I don't think there's any formula you're going to use for your analysis. So what I'm trying to do is spread out a table of concepts that kind of put you on the path to rhetorical analysis. Okay? Purpose, audience, speaker. Yeah, these are all rhetorical. Why does this text exist? What is the stated purpose by the author? What is the real purpose? And notice I got parentheses here as I burrow down into the subconscious. As always, look at the obvious stated intentions as well as those that lie beneath the surface, even in the writers or society's unconscious. Okay, this is where you get into critical theory. What does that mean for society to have an unconscious? Well, if you're a Marxist, you basically have this belief that the means of production are reproduced in your own psychology, and that as you live your life, you are unconsciously, a cog in the machinery of society. So without you even knowing it, you are advancing the means and ends of capitalism. So there's always that kind of analysis going on. And sometimes we're aware of our intentions, and sometimes we're not. And so, the 20th century with its the explosion of psychology, and Freud giving us the psychological unconscious, and other kind of critics giving us critical theory kinds of unconscious. It's a rabbit hole, but it's there for you that you can go into that. It doesn't have to be that difficult. You could simply be much more on the surface. The writer could be saying, my purpose in writing this is XYZ, and the rhetorical analysis could say this is with a purpose, but there's also these other purposes. The reason this is important is because of this that the writer either knew or didn't know. But again, there's a range of complexity you have to get here. And I hope from this little PowerPoint set of slides, you're getting the impression that you can delve deep into all of these rhetorical matters, and you can lose your way. And when you start getting confused, and you'll see this more explicitly in a few moments, the remedy for the deep dive into abstract principles, it's to simplify it again. So again, this balancing of simplifying your task, but then adding layers of complexity, and just talking well about your topic. Step 2, complicate the task. I think this is the last one of the rhetorical concepts. The linguistic effect. This slide is what rhetoric had been reduced to, in the greater part of its history. Is how does language, the style of language and the effects of language enhance your argument. So there are so many things that come from language that make your argument effective. And I just listed a few here to kind of provoke you into thinking of this. Rhyming doesn't exist anywhere in nature other than in language, but rhyming is a pleasant kind of linguistic effect. And good writers know how to use rhyming, rhythm, figures of speech. An anaphora is a repetition of an initial phrase. And I always go back to when I learned anaphora back as a junior in high school, reading Cicero and his orations against Catiline. And he's a lawyer speaking before Congress or the Senate and saying, how long, O Catiline, will we endure your abuses? How long will we, and he would keep repeating that phrase, how long? That's an effect. It's a repetition. It only exists in language, but it's what we call a rhetorical effect, because it helps your argument. It inflames the passions. It kind of builds your momentum. And so there's a million of these things. All of the figures of speech, sometimes called tropes. There are handbooks written on this. So this is a very short slide, but one thing you should realize that if your text has a certain kind of rhetorical effect linguistically, that's valid material for you to analyze and to talk about how it's working. Now, one thing I noticed in my slides that I didn't talk about, because this is the last slide, is the whole area of visual rhetoric that your text does talk about. The way a picture and a graphic, and I think your texts do a wonderful job of exploring that and kind of identifying how that works. But it's the same kind of analysis. You're saying, how does this work? How does this send a message? How does it create an effect on an audience? And on it goes. Okay, so I said 3 easy steps. Step 1 is simplify. When you start getting confused about rhetorical analysis, simplify. Step 2 is to complicate it and go into these concepts. And then step 3 is when you lose your way in layering on rhetorical observations and concepts, Return to step one and somehow step back to your larger, even more obvious analysis. Remember, the unending conversation. This is Kenneth Burke. This notion that life is this unending conversation where we don't know what's going on at first. We kind of catch the drift. We join in. Others come to our aid and others attack us. We kick it around for a while and then we die. Okay, kind of dramatic. But this whole idea that the purpose of your rhetorical analysis is not to really to prove anything definitively. It's not to get to any truth necessarily. It's to talk intelligently, powerfully, engagingly for a while, and then to stop talking. So what you want to do is delve into your analysis, score points, have some really good things to say. You maybe lose your way a little, and then back off of that and simplify it back to your central message, and then call it a day. In a way, it seems like a game, and it seems like I am dismissing it or characterizing it in a way that is not as noble as the search for truth, but it is what it is. Okay, that's what rhetoric is all about. It's about playing the game, but also respecting the game and realizing along the way there's a lot of truth to be gathered and to be to have an effect on people. So I think that's the end. Yes, so I'm gonna hold on one second. Let me pause. So folks, that's it. Here, let me turn on my light here. Yeah, so my glasses don't reflect as much. You can see I moved my computer so that I could operate the slideshow. Why did I do that? Okay, I'm gonna do a little more rhetorical analysis for you. This is a little bit about my ethos. Okay, first of all, you see my buddy Frank Sinatra back there. I love that poster. But the real reason why I moved it was because my daughter, who's a filmmaker, told me that I should not put my computer on my desk, because now I'm looking down at you. You can see before it was higher up, and you can go back and check that out. So, part of the rhetoric of this whole new mode we're in is to figure out, what messages are we sending by the camera angle, by, the way we're delivering these lectures and all these little things. So my attempt is to try to be attuned to this and to help you think about it in different ways. And I also want to learn how to do better at video. I mean, for 30 years, I've been thinking about making short videos for my students. I've never done it because I hate this distance learning. I really think college class needs us to be in the same room and for us to be together. And that's why Dr. Boyer and I have decided that the only way we can make this class work is if we actually spend time together, even if we're doing it over distance modalities. So that's it. So I hope this helps, and I hope that you guys help each other. So I'm going to end this now and ask you to read the clearance page article, and then to take about a few minutes then as a group to just brainstorm with one another about your projects and how you might go forward with this. Also, I want you to remind yourself about SSW, which is coming in your next class. So I'm hoping you can look forward to that and plan for that and have it work for you. Okay, so we are done, and I look forward to seeing you all. Take care. Bye-bye.